about today. The first being alt text or alternative text, and the other item was creating a document library of well-remediated documents, something that we could use or refer to as examples of maybe you have a document that has good alt text or good color contrast, or a document that has good good reading order, for example, all things that are associated with Section 508 compliance. So I'd like to again ask this community if you have any reports, any documents, even if it's on a website, or anything you'd like to share as an example of what good remediation looks like, send it our way and we'll put it on the NTKN 508 website as an example that we can share with the group to point to and say, hey, this is what something good of this type looks like that you can use. And you'll be helping other people and other folks who are probably in the same boat as you as well. So, again, if you have any examples of well remediated items you'd like to share, please send it to us. And we look forward to putting together a well remediated library for everyone in the community to be able to enjoy. Please feel free to email myself or Mary after this meeting, or if you want to send a message in the chat, that works as well. So for this meeting, we were going to talk about alt text a little bit, some tips and tricks, some things maybe your agency does or our agency does, and hopefully share and learn a little bit from each other as we go along. I think to start things off, I want to make this accessible for new folks as well who may be brand new to Section 508. So, for some old timers, this may be a little bit remedial, but just for context, I wanted to quickly do a brief overview of what we mean when we say alt text and maybe the different types of images that you'd be looking at when you're applying alt text. So, let me go ahead and share my screen very quickly here. And just a few slides. This won't take very long at all. So when we say alt text, what we mean is the alternative text attribute that we attach to an image or a figure in a document or a report or even on an online website that describes something about the image or the significance of what's being shown. And this is mostly applicable for online readers or text to audio or things that help individuals who may not be able to see very clearly, but they can hear captions and descriptions of the images being shown. And the alt text, in essence, reads out that description for a sight impaired individual. And so when we write alt text, we want to make sure it is as clear and concise, but also getting to the main point of what you want the image to convey. I always usually tell PIs when writing alt text, think of it like you are describing the image to a colleague, without them ever having seen the image. What would you say to that person to make sure you describe what's being shown if they can't see it? And so there are several types of images that require alt text. Pictures is an obvious example. And in this example, you can see a person and a dog. And somebody may write an alt text caption that just says, here's an image of a person and a dog. And would that be sufficient? In some cases, maybe, but I think context is also very important. For example, what's the purpose of showing this image? What about the surrounding text? Is there a reason you're showing this image? So for this item, I believe this document was merely wanting to show a guide dog and their handler. And so you can see descriptions of alt text in the green check mark as acceptable and the red X mark as unacceptable. The unacceptable, you see it says guide dog and man. And why this doesn't work, you can see that it's not including the purpose of what this image is showing. The purpose is to show the dynamic action of guiding. So again, you want to describe kind of like the purpose and the so what of the image. Yeah, it's an image of a man and a dog, but what is the significance? Why is this important to show? And so that is shown in the caption with the green check mark that says, Pastel, which is the dog's name, leads her handler who holds the harness in his left hand. So you can see an action is being described, all the individuals are being described, and even down to the hand placement, which hand is holding the harness. So very detailed, but also short and concise. It's only about a sentence. So I think that kind of meets our objective of being concise, not too much, not too wordy, but also giving a clear indication of what needs to be described. Another item is portraits. And I know in research reports, I think those are the most common type of documents that we'll be dealing with as librarians and in the DOT, but we may not deal with portraits as much, but still it's good to have this information just in case you have like a headshot in a document, for example. This one describes the pastel, the dog, and also describes anything kind of shown in the background as well. It makes mention of the American flag, whereas the incorrect alt text just says pastel basket. That doesn't really describe too much of what's going on in the image, but saying pastel basket portrait with an American flag, that describes the type of image being shown and everything that is going on in the image. So again, getting that fine line between being descriptive and yet also concise and to the point. Couple more items to briefly go through. We have charts, diagrams, and illustrations. And I think for me, this is one of the most common items that we have, when we go over alt text and things that need alt text. So a lot of PIs usually just say, here's an image of a chart, or maybe they will include some specific figures from the chart, like explaining that, let's say for this chart, the numbers go up to 8, and then there is a 5-day spread shown in the chart. All right, I mean, that's good information, but what's the so what about it? What are the important trends that the information and the data point is showing? That's one thing that we always want to highlight with our PIs. You have this figure, but what is the key takeaway? Why are you showing this figure? What's the one bit of information that you want to impart to someone who is looking to this image, who may not be able to see it very clearly? And so in the bad examples of alt text, you can see, oh, they just say it's a chart, or it's a chart of head pats, ear scratches, and kisses Monday through Friday, or it's a bar chart. But in the good version of the alt text, it shows the trends that you see where head pats, ear scratches climb steadily through the week from Monday to around 5 to 6 on Thursday. Like it's giving a clear description of what the key takeaway is that the author wanted to include in this chart. Lastly, let's see, the last item is text contained in an image. And for a lot of PIs that we deal with, they'll have a decent description of an image in their alt text. But if there is text on the image, for some reason they think, it's text, so a screen reader should be able to catch it. But if it's text in an image, the screen reader is going to skip over it. So you need to replicate the text that is shown in that image in the alt text by typing it out. So you can see the example in the alt text here of the two different looks the dog is giving. Again, if there's text in an image, do type it out rather than expecting the text reader to be able to pick it up, which it won't unless it's typed out in the alt text. And I think the last item to go over very briefly, and Enid White had pointed this out in an email earlier as well, is using null for decorative images. And that means you're going to skip over an image that doesn't need an alt text attribute, or it exists only as a background artifact. This could be visual spacers within a document, or it could just be a background to help something look a little nicer in the report, but it's not something that needs to be described in the alt text. And so to do that, if you're on the web, if you're dealing with a web document in HTML, you can do this by selecting it and typing in, you can see in the brackets there, alt equals, and then let's see, quote marks. And then that should render the screen reader, notifying it that it's a decorative image. Alternatively, generally, we're probably going to mostly be dealing with PDFs. To accomplish this same result in PDFs, you're just going to go to the alt text option in Adobe Acrobat and click on the item that you want to set as a decorative image. And you can see that little check mark that says decorative figure. Just click on that, and that's going to change that item to a decorative figure. And then you'll click save and close, and then you're not going to have to worry about that being picked up as something that needs to be read for alt text. These are just a few ideas to get us started and get the ball rolling. And I also wanted to share a few brief resources as well that may be helpful. Let me go ahead and bring up a few. Let me share the screen one more time here. And I'm going to go ahead and send these. I can send them in an email or I can post them in the chat. And some of these are also uploaded on the NTKN Section 508 Accessibility LibGuide as well. The Social Security Administration put together a very useful guide for alt text for images. And this is where we got a lot of our content for this for the brief PowerPoint presentation today. You can see, I mean, common mistakes is a really helpful section. You can see certain examples of how some alt text may be missing the point or maybe too long or too verbose. It gives clear examples for each type of image or figure that you'll encounter, what to do, what not to do. I think this has been a fantastic resource that we've consulted in the past, when we're trying to figure out alt text, and even to share with PIs in advance of their reporting, preparing their reports. When they're getting ready to, make sure everything's 508 compliant, we always send a batch of resources to them to consult and to figure out, what works and what doesn't. Alternatively, the web accessibility website here talks about decorative images. We can send a link to that. Harvard University has a good brief little section of what works as good alt text and different image types. And if you're just wanting like a quick little summary, the Microsoft website also has good examples of when to use alt text within Microsoft Word. So I know it's a little different setting up for Word and PowerPoint, but each one fits, generally whatever need you're working with. So again, these are just a few resources. We're happy to share them. And also, as part of the pooled fund study, we've been working with CTC and Associates to put together a step-by-step accessibility guide. And we look forward to disseminating that among everybody very soon. So within the next few weeks, we're excited to share that with the group. So that's a little bit about alt text and some of the things that we do on our end. I'd like to open it up to the floor if anyone has any questions or any examples or any problems they've encountered with alt text, or maybe you'd like to share some best practices that you use, in your own agency. Maybe you do something a little differently. Let me go ahead. I'm going to share one more screen very briefly to give you an example of what an ODOT report looks like. So out of Oklahoma Department of Transportation, this is what we'd consider generally a good example of alt text. You can see this figure here, and if you move the mouse over, it's going to show what the screen reader is going to read. And this explains, it's a little bit long, a couple sentences, but it gets to kind of the gist of what the purpose of the image is. The figure shows a picture of the repaired pre-stressed beam after testing to failure. Flexural cracks and concrete crushing are visible under the load point. So this is good because it's showing what exactly is being shown and why it's important. It's showing pre-stressed concrete beam and where the cracks are occurring. And that's exactly what you would want to describe to someone who can't see the image, but you want them to get the point of what's being shown. What's being shown, where it is, why it's significant. So, oh, I see a question in the chat from Penny. Yes, we'll go ahead and make those slides. We can send those slides out to folks along with all the other documents that we've reviewed today. So that's a little bit about how we do it. I'd like to open it up to the floor for discussion. Please, anyone has questions, comments, even criticisms. Maybe you do something differently. Maybe there's something that we should be doing on our end. So yeah, please raise your hand or unmute yourself or however you'd like to contribute. Yeah, Cindy.
Do you have an example of like a engineering heavy nerdy graph like a materials pavement type study. Those are the ones that are gonna be our toughest nut to crack, I think.
Mm.
I kind
You
of
mean
get a portrait.
really dense detail like graphs and bar charts and things like that?
Yeah, with a lot of numbers and yeah, maybe bar charts, maybe graphs, maybe just because I know there's things you're supposed to do in the headings. You're not supposed to merge and center and some other things like that, if I remember correctly. There's some do's and don'ts.
That's a great example. Let me see if I can find one real quickly. As I'm
Okay.
looking, if anyone has any examples that they can think of, right offhand that they'd like to share, or this would be a great example to show in our documents library of well-remediated items. Like, what does a good
Mm.
detail, a text-heavy bar graph with lots of numbers? How, what does that look like? What does good alt text look like for that? So thank you, Cindy, for bringing that up. I think that's an
Yeah, and I
excellent
didn't mean to
first
put you on the
candidate.
spot. It's kind of a lot because it involves color contrast in some cases. It involves the headings and do's and don'ts, and then the rows and columns that describe all the numbers in the main part of the graph. So there's a lot there. It's kind of busy, but yeah, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but that's something to think about because we
No
get a lot of
worries.
that.
I'm wondering, is that something that you'd be able to either isolate and share with the group or send it to us? Like maybe that could be like a workshop item that we could work on
I
as a
could
group together.
I can find one for us to maybe look at what we could do differently. I don't know if I can find it in this session, but I
Okay.
can start looking.
Yeah, no worries. If we want to send an email afterwards, I think that'd be a fantastic project to work on. Katie, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, it looks like we had one in Floyd's last one that we looked for accessibility. Do you mind if I share that one?
Sure, go ahead. And Katie is our other librarian at Oklahoma Transportation Library. She's fantastic.
I had a good teacher. All right, can you see my screen here?
Oh, yeah, awesome.
Okay. This figure shows compressive strength over time for 0% diamond markers and the dash dot line. So it would be that one. 1% triangle markers with the short dash line. So the orange one. 4% the circle markers with the solid line, so the yellow one, and 6% the X markers with the dotted line. So it would be the blue one that's almost on top of the yellow one. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. I wonder, Katie, if we could isolate this and maybe send it as a one-page PDF. We can just compile a bunch of documents and maybe upload it to our documents library.
Sure, sounds good.
Yeah, that'd be great. Very helpful.
Perfect. Anyone else have any other questions or, you know, anything in the back of your mind or anything that comes up that maybe you'd like us as a group to work on or workshop, or maybe you're just brand new to Section 508, still unsure what even alt text is or how to apply it. Maybe you'd like to see some alt text created or written, live. We can do that in Word or PDF, just to do step by step of the process. Anything at all, please let us know because I think as a group I think we're fairly knowledgeable as a group together, so we're here to help. So
I'd like to, while we're waiting for people to think of their great questions and examples, I was made aware yesterday that archive.org is providing a forum for scientists on making their research results accessible. And I heard about this through one of the federal groups that I'm involved in, and they did today increase the number of participants in the event. So let me share my screen for just a moment. Uh, I know I can do this. Okay, so Archive, if you're not familiar with them, they are a place where a lot of scholars, particularly in physics, math, other quantitative fields, they share articles and preprints. And so they're hosted by Cornell University. So this forum is actually being hosted by Cornell. The item that I was particularly interested, this is 1 to 5 p.m. Eastern time next Monday afternoon. This digging deeper into image descriptions for scientific content looks really great to me. And actually, all of the topics look good, but the image one is particularly interesting. If you go here to the page, the main page for the event, you can register and it gives you all the information. So I'm putting this information into the chat. So you could probably register for this, or if you wanted to forward that link to one of your researchers, they may be interested too. I'm interested in this from a lot of different points of view, but particularly how scientists are trying to improve the way they communicate with each other through the use of alt text. Because mostly at NTL, we do work with the submitters, but we also advise a lot of the researchers within the DOT community. So if you're interested, you might want to look into that. Sorry, it's on the last minute, and I'm hoping that they still have spots available.
This is fantastic. I think I'm definitely going to register for that. Is it free to register?
It is free.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's really it looks really great.
Yeah, that looks excellent. Let me go ahead while we're pasting items into the chat. I'm going to go ahead and post the accessibility guides that we've mentioned. Oh, good. Thank you, Katie. Katie mentions they've upped their Zoom capacity and reopened registration. So that's perfect. All right. Well, hopefully someone has had time to think about if you have any questions for this group, or any items you'd like to see covered, or anything at all relating to alt text, or maybe even not alt text. Maybe you have another Section 508 question that we could address. Let's go ahead and give a minute if anyone would like to raise their hand or think of anything they'd like to throw our way.
I emailed you and Mary a graph. I don't know if this would be the right time or place.
Actually,
I don't know how compliant it doesn't have alt text, so immediately it's not compliant, but I don't know.
Let's see. Probably take a minute for it to get through. I haven't seen anything yet, but yeah, we could definitely workshop that
That's
today.
fine. Kind of gives y'all an idea of what we have in our report. But you probably see that in ODOT reports as well.
We definitely get a lot of different kinds in the ODOT report. So I think we usually get a good spread of some PIs who are brand new to it, some who are kind of old veterans and kind of know the ropes by now. So I think it's always a challenge getting the new folks used to it and convincing them why it's important, because to them, they've already completed the report. So why do they need to go back and do all this extra stuff when in their minds they've fulfilled their contract? So I don't know. I'm sure other folks have dealt with other similar issues.
I have the usual professor thing where I tell them to do it and it just doesn't never happen. And we're so busy trying to get the final report. We're grateful to get that. But that's me needing to put the hammer down a little more. I've kind of recommended they do it. It's easier if you build it because Word has the accessibility checker, and I've said all that. But I've just now gotten a couple of them to put their ORCID IDs. So it's slow. It's like turning the Titanic, but slow but sure.
Do you have anything in your contract stipulating they need to be accessible, or is it all kind of just strongly encouraged?
It's in our research manual, but I don't really have any teeth. I can't like do retainage or anything like that. And I don't have time or staff to say, you need to put, alt text on here. I'd maybe eventually like to get a remediation contract of some sort in the next little few years. I don't know. Thinking about that, but maybe for our next work program or two.
I know Enid has some excellent examples of what they've done out in Wyoming as far as how they put their wording into contracts to make sure it's accessible. And we've been doing more of that with ours as well. So if you need examples, I think Enid would be a good one to talk to. And we have an
Oh,
example
yeah.
we can share.
I know her well.
Let's see, Penny posted a resource, creating accessible text boxes. Let's see. Oh, it looks like a series of videos and everything. Having not gone through it, but it is from Section 508 Gov. So honestly, I would figure whatever they would put out would probably be the gold standard for anything alt text related. So yeah, this is a great resource. We can add it to the NTKN guide, I would think. Now, let's see, I'm still not seeing the email come through. I'm going to blame OU IT for this. Cindy, do you want to share is it possible to share your screen of what you sent or?
Yeah, I could do that.
Okay.
Got a few things open right now. Hang on. Okay. Y'all see that? I'll zoom it in a little bit.
Yeah.
This is from a pretty technical, heavy bridge study. And I know probably the titles and the rows and column, the first row and first column might violate some things. Otherwise, it may be okay. It doesn't have alt text, so right off the bat, it's not compliant. But that's the kind of thing we get in addition to graphs.
Actually, I think this would be, I can say how we would handle it at ODOT. And if anyone else wants to chime in, if you do it differently, please, yeah, please jump in. But for this, I don't think we'd necessarily need alt text if it is a table created, or is it an image of a table?
That's the table.
Okay, so if this was a table created using like the table editor in Microsoft Word and not an image of a table, then I would say it wouldn't need alt text necessarily, since
Okay.
the screen reader would be able to pick it up. The only thing I would suggest would be on the top row, you can right click on that on the top row, and it should say go down to table properties. And let's go click on the row tab. And yeah, that one right there. And then where it says repeat as header row at the top of each page, have that checkbox clicked so it knows which row is the header row. And if it does happen to overlap over next page, it'll duplicate that header row. And that would be the only thing. And honestly, it looks like a well-constructed, simple table, like there's no merged cells or anything. This seems like a decent table unless I'm missing anything, because the screen reader will read it left to right from each row in order. So everything that a person would see visually would be repeated by a screen reader since it's done in Microsoft Word. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically if it's a table done in Word and you've got a good title and because probably if you're not a bridge geotech nerd, you're not going to be reading this anyway. But I'm not in that area, so I'm an engineer, but I need a huge refresher course to even be able to understand what they're talking about. So, yeah, I didn't know if you went with the like the pier and the trestle being in that same table, if you need a separate one for each or what. Seems like there was, but just you're saying, okay, all right, that's good to know.
That's a good question, actually, because what you could do, I guess you could make two tables out of it. One be the layer table, the other be the trestle table.
Right.
And then repeat the header rows in the trestle section as well down below.
Yeah.
That could be an option. I don't know. What does anyone else think? Has anyone encountered something like this or dealt with a table that may have a couple different,
I suppose I
guess
could run the accessibility checker.
I think the main thing, as long as it's a simple table and doesn't have any merged cells or anything like that, that's what usually throws screen readers off.
Okay,
So
yeah, it just says check and it's just recommended you could have some table styles or Okay, I
Mhm.
just ran the checker for the heck of it. Okay, all right.
Yeah, overall, I mean, I would be comfortable with the table with the caveat. If you wanted, you could split it into two tables. But as far as a screen reader, I don't think a screen reader would have any issues with this table. But again, if anyone's encountered anything different or has different information, please
Yep.
let us know.
Okay. I'll stop sharing now.
Okay. Oh, and I just now got the email with the graph. Was that the same?
It
Okay, yeah,
is.
that was the same table. Okay, yeah. I think when it comes to like other like, bar graphs and charts and things like that, there's a tendency to either be less descriptive, like here's a image of a graph and here's the table header, I mean, here's the chart headers and things like that, or being overly descriptive, describing every single data point. And there's got to be a way somewhere in between where you do explain what the chart is talking about, and also, again, what's the main point, the so what of the chart. So I think for the table, if you get into complex tables that are unavoidable, that do have merged cells, that have all these complex things going on, generally you can include a table summary, and that's like alt text, like the screen reader is going to pick that summary up. And in the summary, you can just describe, how you would be reading the table and what the main points are. And that can help with the accessibility issues for that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Does anyone have any other questions, comments, or concerns, or anything related to alt text?
I have another thing to add.
Oh, great.
This is also linked from the accessibility guide, our LibGuide, and FHWA maintains this really great website. I brought this up because somebody asked about contracting language. Now, this is for federal grants, but I think that you're going to find that there's some interesting or useful information in here when you go through some of these links. You may be able to modify things like the standard clauses and what have you. So just another resource for you. And I know these folks, I work with them, they keep this content up to date. The training and resources are excellent as well.
This is great.
Did I put that link? I did not do that, and I will do that right now.
Do we have this on the NTKN LibGuide?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, the NTKN LibGuide is a really excellent resource for a lot of these topics. So I know one of the things that's kind of overwhelming, you see all this information and all these different resources. So, I mean, again, that's why we're here to help kind of go through these and workshop these items. So I guess a little bit transitioning now, does anyone have any other accessibility issues maybe they just want to talk about or bring up that maybe not necessarily related to alt text? Or are there topics you would like to see explored more in depth for our next meeting in a couple months? And I think just to throw out some ideas, maybe you have a report you're working on and you'd like to share it with the group for us to take a look at. Maybe there's a section of it. Maybe there's just a one certain part that you can't get quite right in Adobe PDF. Because goodness knows we've had plenty of issues with Adobe PDF. All these errors popping up and we're not quite sure what's going on. So again, if you have a problem like that, please, let us know. We could build a workshop around it next time. We could just, start our own little Section 508 lab and see what we can figure out. So, please let us know if you have any issues like that or anything at all you'd like us to cover, either in the remaining time we have for this meeting or in the next meeting we have coming up in June. If not, then, oh, we have a chat. Let's see. Penny posted, are there issues in Bluebeam like in Adobe? I'm actually not familiar with Bluebeam. Do you want to elaborate on that, or does anyone who's familiar with that, talk briefly what that's about?
Bluebeam is just another PDF creator that our firm now is kind of going away from Adobe and going to this Bluebeam. And so I was just wondering whether there are also the same issues with that too.
Hmm. That's interesting. Does Bluebeam have an accessibility checker or anything similar to like what Adobe uses?
I don't use it myself, but I know our admins do, so I'll have to ask them.
Okay. That's interesting to think of that there's more alternatives besides Adobe PDF, that might make a lot of people's lives easier. Well, that's gonna write this down real quick. Bluebeam, we can look more into that and see what differences there are. And honestly, maybe that would be a good topic for next time to look for alternatives to Adobe PDF, either if they're better or worse or help with accessibility maybe a little bit more. If that's something the group is interested in, we could devote a little bit of time next time to looking at that. Okay, Cindy said she'd be interested in knowing more. Yeah, we can see what's out there, see if there are any better products. And maybe if there are, maybe it's something that the pooled fund could help invest in and maybe buy purchase licenses for folks or things like that. So I think that would be a good idea.
Hey, Michael, one of the
Yeah.
things that I think we've touched on very minimally is how some engineers are working with formulas and, mathematical expressions, which is another kind of dicey topic. One of the ways that I know that FHWA has been dealing with this with their engineers is they use an image of the formula or the expression. But I also know that they looked into working with LaTeX, or I'm never sure how to pronounce that. But that's an electronic typesetting platform for people who work in technical fields, physics, math, um, and perhaps some of you or some of your engineers that you work with have some experience with that, but I'm not sure that we've really looked into that a little more deeper, and that is definitely related to the readability alt text um, issue. So I'm wondering if we could get somebody to talk to us about that. Maybe I can poke around because I know the FHWA people have more experience with that, and I'm always interested in an update.
Oh, that'd be fantastic if we could get like a guest speaker for next time to speak to that. That would be excellent. I'd be happy to reach out, or if you know a contact, I think that'd be good.
Yeah, maybe we should both poke around. I'm gonna contact my person at FHWA and see if she can recommend somebody.
That sounds great. And on that, if anyone has any ideas of topics that you would like to see a guest speaker on, I think that would be a wonderful thing to have us do, to bring in special guests to talk about these topics, like the experts who deal with this all the time. So that'd be great. I know for the formulas and mathematical equations, we've discouraged folks from using LaTeX. We usually just have them convert it to an image and add the alt text into that, and speaking the equation as you would, if you're talking out loud. So, but I think having an expert come in, show us how it's done, talk about that more thoroughly, I think that would be really helpful because I know a lot of folks are struggling with the equations too. So,
I'm hoping that I'll learn a little more about it after I go to that archive seminar next Monday afternoon. But FHWA has also been using, is it MathLab? Uh,
a math
MATLAB.
math type is it, or is that something else?
It's another platform that allows you to render mathematical expressions for publication. So I know that they've used both and have some experience with all three scenarios. Just throwing that out there. I think I really need an update with this. Maybe we all need a little more information. I can look into that, and I'll be in touch with you, Michael.
That sounds perfect. Yeah, that'd be very good to have. All right. Well, we may conclude a little bit early today rather than our usual hour. I do want to give one last opportunity for folks. If you have a question, if you have a problem, maybe there's something you'd like us to work on either this time or next time, let us know. Because I know the world of Section 508, it was extremely confusing when I first started, and it still is confusing, admittedly. So I can't be the only one. So please let us know if there's anything you'd like us to consider, even just to shout out. Let us know what you'd like us to look at for next time. We'd be happy to take a look at that. All right. If not, then, again, please email us. Let me go ahead and post in the chat my email address as well if you need to get in touch. Right. And Mary, when is our next meeting scheduled for?
Our next meeting is on Tuesday, June 13th, and that is again from 3 to 4 Eastern time. And we'll send out some reminders for you before that happens.
Perfect. That sounds good. And we will post this video on our YouTube channel as well if you want to review this later on. So yeah, I don't have too much else to say except thank you to everyone for participating, and we look forward to having a good either speaker or presentation or workshop next time. We'll come up with something good for folks to hopefully learn and take back to their agency. So, Mary, do you have any closing thoughts or?
That's it. Another great meeting. Michael, if you send me a copy of those slides, I'll put them in our webpage.
Okay,
So
perfect.
people can link to the video as well as download the slides.
Okay, perfect. I'll do that right after.
Okay.
All
Thanks,
right. Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. See you next time.
Thank
Bye.
you.